Good evening, everyone. Tonight, the people of Borneo lie awake on their beds as a startling revelation reverberates through all communications. Low on ammo, God save the Queen. Those were the final words of an SAS raiding party sent across the Sarawak, Kalimantan border into an Indonesian airbase. This unprecedented escalation marks a turning point in what many people are now calling Southeast Asia's most dangerous conflict since the American intervention in Vietnam. Indonesian sources indicated that the operation began in the early hours of this morning. A group of SAS soldiers were parachuted into Indonesia to sabotage brand new Indonesian MiG-21s and IL-28s, which had just recently been deployed to the region. It had been long reported that Soviet fighters have been sighted along the Malacca Strait, as Moscow has ramped up its military and economic aid to Jakarta, and these new air assets may be the fruits of this exchange. Though not much is known, many speculated that the mission was either compromised or was overambitious. Most of the soldiers were either killed or fled, while two were captured by Indonesian security forces. President Sukarno, in an emergency meeting earlier in the day, had again accused Western powers of orchestrating a neo-colonial conspiracy against Indonesia. Together with these statements and calls for a Konfrontasi, Western observers expect a swift and decisive response by Indonesian military commanders. As for Jakarta, the Commonwealth incursion is nothing short of a declaration of war. But the stakes are highest for the Malaysian government. It had only been a decade since its independence, and the confrontation with Indonesia is shaping to be its biggest crisis since the emergency of '48. What little of its army is stretched thin by ongoing guerrilla incursions in Sabah and Sarawak, and its government faces a dangerous gamble by involving foreign powers in what Jakarta considers to be a regional dispute. Diplomacy now hangs by a thread. Diplomatic channels between Kuala Lumpur and Jakarta remain eerily silent. The international community, including the United Nations, has yet to issue a formal response, but here on the ground, one thing is clear: this conflict is escalating. Many are predicting that the conflict will no longer be confined to the jungles of Borneo. Across both nations, civilians are feeling the conflicts of this brewing war. Thousands are evacuating towns and villages near the conflict zone, unsure when or if it will ever be safe to return. We will continue to monitor this story as it develops.
Здравствуйте, говорите. President Sukarno. What a delight it is to receive your call. How can the Soviet consulate help you today? Yes, you have our word, President Sukarno. To quote Premier Khrushchev in Article 128 of Jakarta-Moscow Agreement, the Soviet Union will continue to support Indonesia in military and economic aid as long as it benefits both sides. To be frank with you, the Presidium has vested interest in your region. We too believe that Southeast Asia should be free from the imperialist and economic aspirations of the West. As partners in liberations, we believe that Indonesia's success not only strengthens your sovereignty, but also fortifies our shared ideological battle against imperialism. However, our methods must be measured and strategic. Thus, the Soviet Union will not intervene in your conflict, as we believe you are more than sufficiently supplied to continue on your own. Yes. Yes, of course. Rest assured, President Sukarno, the Soviet Union stands by you. But in this struggle, the strength and wisdom of Indonesia's leadership will determine the course of history.
Good afternoon. We have just received confirmation from Commonwealth and Malaysian officials that soldiers of the Kalimantan National Liberation Army have advanced to the gates of Kuching, the capital of Sarawak. It had only been half a decade before when the fighting between Malaysia, Indonesia, and Indonesia slowed to a stalemate. But now any hope for a peaceful resolution will forever be wishful thinking. Now we bring to you from reports of first-hand accounts the events of this fateful morning. At 5:45 in the morning, airfields and ports surrounding the cities of Kuching, Miri, and Labuan erupted into flames as Indonesian bombers crossed the border in a mass airstrike. This comes after earlier reports of a mass sabotage campaign occurring amongst important military infrastructure conducted by Indonesian irregular forces. At the same time, Indonesian forces of 40,000 strong, supported by heavy armor, punched through the border stations of Tebedu and Serikin. At 6:30, the first battle of the campaign occurred at Tebedu. The Indonesian assault was fierce but ultimately failed at 9 a.m., as they were unable to fully capture the outpost. Elsewhere, the Indonesian forces punched through the village of Bau with little resistance. Within an hour, Commonwealth guns surrounding the village became silent. In the meantime, Commonwealth and Malaysian forces are reorganized along the outskirts of Kuching in an attempt to fortify the city further. With whatever remnants of the RAF and RAAF, they are scrambled in an attempt to counter Indonesian air superiority. Along with that, Gurkha and Malaysian Ranger regiments have been activated and have been sent behind enemy lines in an attempt to disrupt the Indonesian supply lines. At 12:34 p.m., Commonwealth forces entrenched along the Sarawak River received a fierce bombardment from Indonesian forces. Supported by tanks and attack jets, the Indonesian forces attacked the defensive positions southwest of the river. The largest spectacle, however, would be the parachutes of the combined Indonesian para-commando regiments, choking the sky above as they dropped behind the Commonwealth lines. Commonwealth and Malaysian soldiers held the line valiantly, but were ultimately forced to withdraw to prevent encirclement. The fate of Kuching and the rest of Malaysian Borneo remains uncertain, as the whispers of doubts are getting louder on whether Sarawak and Sabah will even be part of the Malaysian Federation anymore. We are now awaiting the joint response on the matter from the Malaysian and British governments.
So, let's set the stage from here on.
Alright, so Malaysia and their Commonwealth allies come out on top, but what does this actually mean for the region? It shows that we need more unity in Southeast Asia, and this will help us create a groundwork for stronger ASEAN. We need the ASEAN to focus on defending sovereignty and promote non-interference.
Yeah, and furthermore, I think that this war cements the fact that Western backing is critical for Malaysia, and also US gains a stronger foothold in Southeast Asia in general, and let's be honest, that's exactly what they want. So yeah, US is basically just like, we have your back as long as you're not team communist.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Indonesia is actually in a tough spot because they're bruised and they're battered from like a war, and then they're rethinking their whole strategy. And do you guys know like Sukarno, like the president?
Yeah.
He might even be in the hot water after this. So imagine like this whole new world with like a new political alignment where we have like lesser communism but we lean towards more of like a Western alignment, like the failed communist uprising in 1965.
Yeah, plus the Soviet Union, they are rethinking their involvement back here. After losing in Southeast Asia, they might scale back and focus more on the France in the Cold War. China probably in a bit more cautious, trying to avoid bringing even more like US interference in their backyard. Yeah.
So let's focus on economics for a second. Borneo's been torn up, their towns are destroyed, and their infrastructure is a mess. Malaysia is going to need some serious reconstruction aid from likely Western allies. This increases their economic ties with the US and Britain, and it shows that Malaysia has deeper capitalist structures and a growing dependency on Western economies.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that this doesn't only apply to reconstruction but everything. Malaysia is now leaning towards being more pro-US in every aspect, trades, whatever policies. So yeah, and other Southeast Asian countries might follow as well with that.
We know that Malaysia is part of ASEAN, right? And we're actually like uniting more with other Southeast Asians because like we want to like overthrow Indonesia because Indonesia is expanding, and even though like Malaysia has the resilience to like safeguard our own border, but I think it actually helps strengthening our regional unity, and it's more towards like Western and specifically like US, what they want for us. So the reason why US is probably like pro-Malaysia now is because like we're aligning with their interests.
So now we're in the post-war period, right? And Malaysia and Indonesia aren't exactly best buds, but they're both being practical. I mean, they both need stability to rebuild.
Yeah. And you know what? Sure, this shared experience was really messy, but it actually pushed both countries to have a lot of respect for each other's sovereignty. So then maybe over time they can form a partnership that's focused on both mutual growth and defense. So then ASEAN can become this platform to prevent conflict and encourage cooperation.
There you have it, a scenario where the Konfrontasi was much more than just a confrontation. It was an actual war, and what was the outcome? Southeast Asia got more united, they get closer, and importantly, more tied to the West.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy if like you think like how one escalated conflict could reshape the entire alliances or economics, right? The Southeast Asia, as we know today, it might be totally different if this had played out. Yeah.
Exactly. All right, that's it. Thanks for listening and tune in next time.